This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jaden Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 452 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host, Stefan Botzko, and today we will embark on the 11th season of the Yellowwallpod. And we have a lot of things to talk about. Emre Can becoming the new team captain, Marcel Sabitzer joining the Black and Yellows, Dortmund's preseason form / injury malaise. Yep, same old. And speaking of same old, here with me is Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
Well, given that it's the 11th season of the Yellowwallpod, I think old is an apt description. When started this thing, I only had one kid. Now I have three. So, yeah, it's been an interesting 11 years, and it's great to continue on. I guess I'm looking forward to the season. We'll see how it goes, Stefan.
Yeah. Looking forward is, I think, a very good approach, because I am not sure how much I want to look back, but as Tess said, it's part of our story now. Yeah, where to begin? Let's begin with Emre Can, just as I had it written down. He has been announced as the new Dortmund captain, as Marco Reus stepped down from the captaincy. Since you are the greatest Emre Can supporter, I think it's only right that I ask you about this development before I have my own 2 cents about it.
Okay, so yes, probably on the podcast consistently I was the biggest Emre Can supporter, even though I wasn't ignorant to the issues surrounding him. But I always appreciated his willingness to fight, his not literally always, but
although against Ajax, he was also
true.
right there in that
That's
brawl.
true, but he never gives up. He gave 100%, even when he was down, even in the times when he wasn't doing well. He dusted himself off and kept going. I mean, the amount of times over the last few seasons where, midfielder Emre Can makes the last-ditch tackle says a lot about his character. And when we look back on, I want to say it's the Augsburg match from last season, where we'll say the old Emre Can would have easily gotten triggered by, I forget who it was from Augsburg who shoved him twice, and Emre Can just kind of,
I don't know, the Augsburg
laughed.
Players are all like random in the background anime characters. You just don't know them.
No, it's plug and play. And he just kind of chuckled it off, and that's one of my favorite Emre Can moments, because it showed true growth. People say, well, he should be, grown up. I mean, he's 29 years old. But that being said, when I was in my 20s, even at 29, you still have a little bit more emotion behind your reactions at times. And so it's good to see it. He obviously had a really good season. I don't know if I would say he was the best Dortmund player of the season, but he was definitely in that discussion. As far as Marco Reus stepping down from that role, I understand why. Marco Reus is now 34 years old, which is really hard to believe, to be perfectly honest. And
he still looks relatively young too, doesn't he?
Yeah, I know. Damn him for that. No, but he wasn't a number one automatic starter anymore. That had moved past him. He extended his contract, but I see Marco Reus retirement here coming pretty soon, and so having this transition happen whilst he's still on the team, I think is actually really good. It sets a good message. It's kind of like, when Mats Hummels came back, it wasn't immediately that Marco Reus is no longer captain. It's Mats Hummels. No, the team had moved on, and I think this is also kind of ushering in that next step in development in the squad. So also getting that balance right between very young and seasoned veterans. So I have no issue with Marco Reus stepping down from the captaincy. I think that makes perfect sense. As far as Emre Can taking up, I look at the rest of the squad. Mats Hummels is also 34. He's going to be 35 at the end of the year. So he's not going to be around much longer. I don't think Gregor Kobel is really there to be captain yet. I could see that happening because he's not, a wallflower. He's no shrinking violet. Let's see if we can find another flower analogy there. But when we get past him, Julian Brandt, he's not a leader in that sense. And then you look at front, Sebastian Aller, no. So really the default for me is almost an Emre Can. You could maybe look at Kobel in future, but right now, if Marco Reus is giving up the captaincy, I think Emre Can, I can agree with that decision, knowing that it's also based on just one season, but a captain's more than performance. It's also about attitude and rallying the troops. And Emre Can always has done that, even when he wasn't playing well.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a leader. You can't argue against that. The only thing I feel a little bit uneasy about, and speaking as one of the, say, bigger detractors on this show, is that I just really hope that his performance that he showed, especially in the second half of last season, can continue. Because if you want to be the captain of Borussia Dortmund, obviously you need to be, you need to have a certain personality. You can't just be some random dude. And in that regard, it's I've seen this a lot. A lot of people say that it's maybe better for Marco Reus to not be captain because it always felt a little bit like there was a weight on him being the captain, a little bit similar to how it was with Marcel Schmelzer, if you remember his captaincy. And that being said, other than that, I'm perfectly happy with Emre Can being the captain. And I'm a little surprised to say that myself, I would have been also fine had it been Hummels, had it been Süle, had it been Kobel, or I don't know. That would have been fine for me. But Emre Can, I think, is perfectly suited for the role if the performances on the field are also in line with that. Because as the captain, I think you need to be one of the better players too. Not necessarily, but I think it does help. So, an interesting development nonetheless, and I'm glad we talked about it. Emre Can obviously also extended his contract. I think like a week before his captaincy was announced. So that is also very important in the sense that you have some long-term captain there and maybe also a core to build around. And Emre Can right now, as the squad planning looks, is part of that core. But obviously there is now a little bit more competition for his spot with Marcel Sabitzer entering Borussia Dortmund's team and joining, of course, from Bayern Munich. He was loaned out from Munich to Manchester United, and I think Dortmund paid around 19 million for him. So, all in all, I would say a fair deal. Don't think Dortmund over or underpaid for him, but that being said, Marcel Sabitzer in his first appearances has already impressed me quite a bit. And looks like a very capable and solid player in midfield, which also will take a lot of pressure off Felix Metscher, who of course had his first brace for the Black and Yellows, and we can talk about that subject in a little bit. Well, but in the meantime, Matthias, Marcel Sabitzer, obviously also team captain for RB Leipzig, not too long ago, now playing for Dortmund. What do you make of this purchase?
Well, like you said, I think it's smart. He was available. They paid, 19 million. According to Transfermarkt, his transfer value is 20 million. So they basically paid market value for him. 29 years old. He's a veteran player. He's very consistent. I don't remember many injury issues with him, so that's very important. And it adds depth in an area. I mean, So obviously Jude Bellingham is gone. And Jude Bellingham, for the type of player he was, you were never going to get a like for like replacement. That's just not going to happen. He is a generational talent. And I kind of think of, some of the script from Moneyball, from the movie, where they say we're going to recreate, Johnny Damon or whatever in the aggregate. And that is what it seems Dortmund are trying to do in central midfield. If we look at Felix Mecha and Marcel Sabitzer, they're different types of players. Mecha is more offensive focused. Sabitzer is more central and defensive, even though he can carry the ball forward very well and move the ball forward very well. And then you combine that with Julian Brandt and then Can and Özcan kind of behind him. They have options in rotational things that they can then do in that kind of central midfield space. And having too much depth isn't a sentence we will ever say at Borussia Dortmund when it comes to positions that Dortmund are very reliant upon functioning for their overall tactical approach. When you look at team pressing and stuff like that, that core central area just has to work. If it doesn't work, it breaks down. Your back line will always be exposed. It doesn't matter if you have the 4 greatest defenders in the world. It gives problems. In transition, and Marcel Sabitzer is very good at solidifying that. So, I don't really pay much attention to preseason friendlies. I've been saying that now for 11 seasons. I barely ever watch any. That being said, from the snippets I've watched, good. Watched him, in his previous stints where he was always a very good player. So no, I'm happy, and I'm happy that Owen didn't overspend, and we'll get a few good years out of him.
Yeah, definitely. Considering he's 29 now, and obviously we have to address the elephant in the room is that he actually grew up sleeping in FC Bayern bed sheets. So that's a big yuck.
Yeah, but he's Austrian. That's the thing.
Austrian.
It's kind of, that's not surprising if you look at the geography.
Yeah, and for him going to Bayern was actually a childhood dream, so can't believe they ended it like that so quickly. I'm also not sure because I really don't follow Bayern closely. I don't know why exactly it didn't work out for him at Bayern. Do you know why, by any chance?
I don't really.
Maybe just...
all I can imagine is Thomas Tuchel just doesn't see him in his system. And they have a lot of depth. Yeah. They have a lot of depth in there for players that are just, if you look at Goretzka, because Goretzka's not even a guaranteed start, which is something 2 years ago you never would have imagined saying. So Sabitzer kind of falls even below that. And so it's just, we got to turn this asset into money. We don't care if Dortmund buy it. We don't care who buys it. And they kind of got the value of the player. So, Thomas Tuchel himself and then Bayern in general, there's not a lot of room for sentimentality there unless you're looking at like generational players like a Sebastian Schweinsteiger or a Thomas Müller, people that are true Bayern guys. Beyond that, they are pretty ruthless, which is, it's one of their strengths as a club, that they're like, nah, move on, next. And the fact that they can just dump a player of his quality, of his proven quality. This isn't like he's 19 and we don't know. He's 29 and we know. So given his proven quality, and Tuchel just went, there's no room for him in my system on a consistent basis. We can't justify the wage spend. I think it's probably just as pragmatic as that.
I have another theory, and that is they were out to weaken Leipzig. Because that's also something that Bayern do, and so maybe we're the benefactors of that. Obviously, one thing he doesn't really do as well as Jude Bellingham is the whole take-ons thing, since that's really something where he is in like the low 6th percentile on FBref, because obviously that's one of the main strengths of Jude Bellingham, but I would say that Sabitzer is probably a little bit of a better passer when it comes to progressive passes and through balls and the likes like that. And I think this is probably one of his main strengths compared to Mecha and Bellingham. I wouldn't say for him by himself, but I think it's going to help. And one reason why I think he's going to play or create a lot of assists is not because the playmaking capability by itself, but because he's a very good pressing player and a very good ball winner. And he sometimes pushes up really far, almost plays more as a number 10 when in defense than a number 8. Just because he is such an aggressive player, and when it comes to interceptions and winning the ball high in midfield, as we've seen, for example, in the friendly against Manchester United, where he just intercepted a really poor pass and passed it right to Marlon, I think it was. I think these are the situations where Marcel Sabitzer excels and is a player that really does fit into Dortmund's system. He is not the tallest, but he does win a lot of aerials too. So in that category, I think him and Mecha are relatively even matched. But there are obviously some key differences. But I think what a really good part is about both these midfielders is that they are very threatening in front of goal, that they both have a good shot that can score or just, be a threat from like the second row, as we say in German. And I think diversifying your goal threat from midfield certainly helps. I mean, Jude Bellingham also scored a lot of goals, but he also, whiffed on a lot of chances. So I wonder if that in any way, shape or form helps or doesn't help. We shall see. But at least from that standpoint, I'm quite excited about the season now. Obviously, on the last episode, I talked about Felix Mecha with Lars already, but Matthias, what is your opinion on signing a very controversial player, let's say, which at least on Twitter and elsewhere already has caused rifts between Dortmund fans, considering his transphobic positions that he is publicly displaying?
Yeah, about that. Well, I mean, if we, and it's funny, I've had actually on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call that trash heap of a platform. And just so you know, Twitter's always been a dung pile. It's always been a flaming pile of turd garbage. So it's not really gotten any worse. Let's be perfectly honest. No matter which,
it's gotten worse.
I don't know.
It's gotten
in
worse.
my opinion, I don't care which billionaire owns it. They're all a bunch of assholes anyway. So anyway, I've gotten
with that out of the way.
I've gotten a few DMs asking me on my opinion about Nemecha, and a lot of the conversations are compartmentalizing between sports side and non-sports side, on field, off field, which as a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan is kind of a constant theme for at least the last 35 years. And it's very hard for me at times to separate the two. On the pitch, athletically, sports-wise, I'll be perfectly honest, I don't have a big opinion about him because I haven't seen him much, because I don't watch Wolfsburg because it's Wolfsburg and I'd rather watch paint dry. Now he's performed well. He did well against Ajax. That's great.
But it's one game. Otherwise, it was injured.
It's a preseason friendly. Again, I don't really care about preseason friendlies. So that aspect, we'll kind of put aside and see what happens. I can kind of see where he's going to fit in. I am optimistic there. When it comes to the financials involved, I'm a little bit less happy about it. I think Dortmund stretched a little bit. Now, granted, he's only 22. So, the theory is, of course, he develops at Dortmund, becomes a higher caliber player, and then eventually maybe you cash in for 50 million. That's the math these days. I think more 25 million would have been a better purchasing price, in my opinion. So getting on to the other stuff, obviously it is if that is what he thinks, then that is what he thinks. I don't agree with him. I don't agree with the analogies driven. Now, he did the typical thing of, well, not saying it directly, but by retweeting it, you're essentially saying it directly. You're just using somebody else's words, which for me, I dislike even more, because you don't even have the courage to just say directly what you think. You're kind of using a false screen behind that. I mean, obviously I wish he wouldn't think that. I wish he wouldn't say that. There's no wishing that away. For Dortmund as a club to then still sign him, that's a hard choice to make. They have personal conversations with him. If he now doesn't post those things moving forward, that's one thing, but obviously odds are his opinion hasn't changed. Now, granted, his opinion may have changed, because maybe this put a mirror in front of him and went, that's not cool. That's not a way to think, because he got that pushback. And when you're young, that can happen. You say something, you do something in the moment, or this is something you believe, and somebody puts a really hard mirror in front of you and goes, no. And then you start rethinking that. I mean, hell, it happens later in life too. So my hope is there that this...
One can only hope for you.
Yeah, well, thanks. My hope is that this was maybe a catalyst for him to change on his views on that. I've heard some people say, I shouldn't sign him. He's too religious. He was wearing a cross. I'll be honest, I don't care about that. That's his personal choice. If he is religious and he's wearing a cross,
yeah, you can be religious and wear a cross. Yeah, nobody cares.
No, a lot of people cared, because I saw the posts when he got signed, and people were like, "Oh, look at him wearing a cross." I'm like, okay, no. You see, oftentimes players go onto the pitch praying, whatever religion they follow. If that's going to be a hallmark to disenfranchise someone based on their religion, I'm not going to have that conversation with people. But no,
I mean, Borussia Dortmund literally, the Dreifaltigkeitskirche is part of the founding of
absolutely.
The club. So it's not like Borussia Dortmund does not have religious foundations itself. And I think religious freedom is very much on the placard of the Borussia Dortmund Verbindet campaign. So if you say he can wear a cross and not be an open Christian, I think that is also wrong. But obviously the open Christianity ends where transphobia and other hate starts, I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Should Dortmund have not signed him based on that? I don't know. That's not for me to say. It's
difficult.
It's difficult because I am not morally pure either, like nobody else is, and so I don't want to say that somebody who echoes those other sentiments, no matter how much I disagree with them, that they don't have a right then to make a living. That's just a very slippery slope that I'm not willing to go down.
Yeah, like I said, it's a very difficult subject. It was also funny. I was watching the Ajax game on the couch with my wife. Dortmund scored, and she celebrated, and she saw who it was, and it's just the yay went into a nay. It's kind of funny to see. But I think this is a subject that will accompany us throughout the season, and I don't know if it will get any easier. But at least from a footballing standpoint, even though it's not great to say, to separate these things, but in a sense, I feel like I need to, because he will play football for Borussia Dortmund if I want it or not. He at least looks decent, and the potential is there. So if it weren't for hateful views that he carries or carried, I don't know, then I think he would be a very good signing, very good player with a lot of potential that you can develop.
Let's be perfectly honest. If he performs really, really well and he doesn't post on social media in the degree that he did in the past, the majority of Borussia Dortmund fans will move past it. If he, however, doesn't do one of those two things, now if he doesn't perform well, they're just going to use a hammer to hammer him with, no matter what happens. If he doesn't perform well and posts more things like that, or performs well and posts more things like that, then it's going to be more difficult. And then Borussia Dortmund are going to be pushed into a different position, because now it's their player that they're going to have to discipline in some way. And I've seen some people say, well, look at what other teams and other sports do when someone, abuses their spouse. Well, that's still significantly different. Exacting physical violence upon someone. And obviously, if a Dortmund player does that, I would be not just for Borussia Dortmund sanctioning the player, but severing ties. So
as they've done with Nico Schulz, even though his allegations have not been proven in court, of course.
True. But there was more to Nico Schulz than that allegation. There was also the fact that literally nobody wants the guy. The thing with Felix Netscher, it's all in his hands. That's the thing. Everything is in his hands on his legacy at Borussia Dortmund, how fans perceive him, how he's treated. If he plays really well and he shuts up on social media, which in my opinion should just be a general guideline for athletes, then I think the majority of Borussia Dortmund fans will move past it over the course of a season or two.
We also should not be so deluded to say that, supporting a football team and the footballers playing for it, you will probably support people that hold homophobic views. Just statistically, and
or
the
just
way
people you
the
don't
whole
like.
culture is.
People you just genuinely don't like. That person's an asshole, but I love the team. Again, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. So,
But everyone involved are assholes, really.
Well, kind of ish.
From the fans to the owners.
Hey now, this is coming from someone living outside of Philadelphia. I don't want to hear about fans being assholes. But
I live inside Philadelphia, first of all.
Fair enough.
And I'm not an Eagles fan.
Okay, that helps.
But yes.
So, be that as it may, it'll come down to, this is obviously a narrative that will be told every single time he plays, at least in the beginning of the season. And let's be honest. How often did the media drum during every Dortmund match when Dortmund had a 2-goal lead in the 70th minute about blowing a 2-goal lead against Bremen? And this is not that. This will be something that's always going to be brought up, at least in the first season, and at minimum in the first half of the season. And then it's down to his behavior on and off the field.
Right. Anyway, I think it's time to move on, because there are other new players that, we're happy to give some early impressions. Rami Benzobaini is one of those. Matthias, I know you haven't watched much, so I don't know how much you can say about him, but I think, as expected, he looks fairly solid. Obviously more solid as a defender. Going forward, he obviously does have a lot of pace and dynamicism, which does help. I'm sort of okay with the transfer, but I've said on the previous shows that I'm not too psyched about him. I do think that he does also make a lot of tactical mistakes, but obviously it's very early in the season. We haven't seen those yet, so far so good. What's your opinion on the transfer? I don't know if I've asked you about him since he's joined or not.
No, we kind of briefly chatted about it.
Yeah.
I mean, so the fact that it's a free transfer, that already gets like a bunch of thumbs up. So, you know, you didn't spend that money. Obviously, wages are going to be what wages are. He's 28 years old. I think defensively, he's an upgrade over Guerrero. Offensively, he's a downgrade.
I'm an upgrade defensively over Guerrero.
I mean, he's also a more physical presence, so that'll always help. Because Guerrero, some of his biggest problems were just whenever it got physical, he just kind of fell away. And obviously, in the air, Guerrero is useless. Ben Sabaini gives a little bit more option, a little more vertical in his game there, and he's a little bit more of not even a little, but he's more of a physical presence than Guerrero. I think
we have to actually talk about this a little bit more because you know, the fullback position is obviously one of the most complex positions in football right now, because you basically have to fill in as a center back at times, and you're also an attacking midfielder that can dribble inside the box, has to cross. Like the skill set for a modern fullback is crazy high. The requirements to fulfill that. So if you look at your footballing CV and all your skill set, if you make a good fullback or not, is not that easy. So there were already a lot of instances where he had to defend as sort of a center back like marker, and I want to say right from the get go, it looks really clean. It looks good, and that to me already is a big plus, because so many times Guerrero was right in the vicinity of the attacker that came at the far post from a cross, but he just did not have the oomph or physicality or whatever you want to call it, or maybe even the timing, which is also very important, to defend it properly. And if that's already an upgrade, I think that will save Dortmund, I don't know, 3 to 4, maybe 5 goals a season, which in some crucial games can really make a big difference. So at least in that regard, I'm already very happy. And even though Guerrero, I think, improved over the last 2 seasons in that category quite a lot, especially last season, stamina is also a thing that Guerrero wasn't. He was never the best athlete. And Bensebaini most certainly can go at a higher pace for 90 minutes. I think those 2 factors already make me a little happy to have that now. Obviously, there are a lot of footballing skills that Guerrero possesses that Bensebaini does not, but his first touch looks also very well. If there's a switch of play, he can, because that's how I measure my left backs and right backs ever since Guerrero. If the ball arrives from the other side of the field, can you put it right in front of you, dead center, with one touch? And he's able to do that. And that to me is already very important, to have that sort of technical skill. And he's shown that consistently. So in that category, I'm also happy. Obviously, his approach to playmaking, to passing, to crossing is very different, and Dortmund's attackers and him will have to get used to it. But Matthias, sorry for cutting you off and going on a monologue. These are already positive things after saying that I wasn't too happy with him as a player, but I already have a couple of things to list off where at least for now I'm positive about.
Yeah, and one of the areas that I'm going to judge him on is hustle. I was never shy about criticizing Guerrero defensively, and the amount of goals and breakaways that were a direct result of his lack of work rate and hustle when it comes to coming back. When we compare that to when Riasson or Marius Wolf would be on the left side, technically, there's no question, far inferior players to Guerrero. But when it came to hustling back, getting back in position, and being a defensive player, which you have to be, I mean, it's defender is in the name, they were better than him. And if you combine that with a player that's better than Riasson and Wolf, technically, it's his natural side, stuff like that. I think overall it's great. That being said, I'm still sad that Guerrero decided to go to Bayern. I mean, that was a Guerrero decision. That was not a Borussia Dortmund decision. I think him in central midfield, if that's where they would have ended up placing him, which I kind of feel like they probably would have, Because I think they wanted.
Yeah, I think that was the clear plan.
They wanted
once
Ben
they had
Sebaini
it.
anyway. I don't even know if they would have brought in Felix Nemecha at that point, and they certainly wouldn't have brought him in for that price. I think they may have bought him and said, "Hey, this is how much." It's kind of like with Alvarez. They said, "This is how much we're willing to spend," and if the club would say, "No, we want more," they'd be like, "Nah, we're good." And when you look at Borussia Dortmund, when that whole situation there with Alvarez and so on, I think Dortmund made the right decision. I mean, with Can, with Özcan, and now with Sabitzer coming in as well, they didn't overspend for a player, because at the end of the day, Ajax wanted them to overspend. Now they're going to have West Ham, blow Premier League money on him. So I think it's win-win for player and two clubs in that situation. So again, Rafael Guerreiro leaving to Bayern is the thing that really bugs me, because he should know better. But then again, so should Hummels and Mario Götze. But, Guerreiro has one of his biggest fanboys at Bayern in Thomas Tuchel. So, I can see that he wanted to play again for a coach that he really, really liked and that really likes him. So probably also plays into the whole Sabitzer could leave because Guerreiro's there, and obviously Guerreiro's not going to be a starting left back at Bayern.
No, that's exactly what happened.
So that it's kind of this little domino effect from that. So yeah, we'll see, right?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, right now Guerreiro is obviously working on I was gonna say stilts, but it's crutches. And he is injured, so I hope he gets better soon, obviously. But yeah, that's always a risk with Guerreiro on your team, that he might be out. But looking at the Dortmund squad, I think injuries, once again, Matthias, going into the new season is already a subject. Gregor Kobel and Nico Schlotterbeck are already doubtful or questionable for the first game of the Bundesliga season. They're already ruled out, or I think it's highly doubtful that they will play in the cup on, I think it's Saturday, against TSV Schott Mainz. And yeah, Thomas Meunier, obviously a player Dortmund want to rid themselves of, played 4 minutes against Manchester United, I think it was, or was it Chelsea, I don't even remember, and tore a muscle fiber and is now out for probably the entirety of the rest of the transfer window, which ends at the end of August / beginning of September. So the likelihood of him being signed by a different club is also not very high. I honestly don't know if we will see Thomas Meunier play for Dortmund in any part should he stay on the team, because I just really don't think that Edin Terzic rates him as a player whatsoever. I mean, when in his very first stint as the interim coach, Moret was already the preferred choice. Back then, obviously, we don't know what the situation is with Matteo Moret this season. What we know that Marius Wolf and Julian Riasson right now are the de facto right back number one options, and I think ahead of that in the pecking order would also be Niklas Süle if it weren't for Dortmund only having 3 center backs and one already being injured, which in itself is a bit problematic. And I really do hope that Dortmund sign another center back in this transfer window, because I just don't see how Dortmund can go through a season with 3 real center back options, and I don't think that Koulibaly or Papadopoulos are there yet to be trusted with real Bundesliga minutes. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but should it be the case, and I have a feeling it will be, that 2 out of 3, or maybe even all 3 center backs are injured for a Champions League night, I don't think I want Papadopoulos there. I think there needs to be a 4th option. I don't know how you feel about that, Matthias, but I don't know, maybe that's something that Sabitzer also can do, but I'm not really sure about that. Emre Can has done it before. Maybe Özcan, someone who can also play center back if really push comes to shove, but I'm not really happy with either of these options, if I'm truly honest. I'd rather have another 4th solid center back option, should it be out there somewhere.
No, I agree. I don't think your backup to your three central defenders should be Emre Can, because I think Can is more valuable to the squad in the number 6 role. Now, obviously, he can do that, and then you can shift around in midfield because now you have that depth specifically at that position. That being said, Koulibaly, Papadopoulos, I just don't think they're good enough for the Bundesliga and beyond. So, I hope they bring someone in who can be young. That's okay. Or, again, falling in that, 26 to 29-year-old veteran who doesn't have a problem with being in a rotation, because Dortmund are going to have to rotate this season.
Yeah. Agreed. And obviously, when we're on the right back subject, do you think that Dortmund should sign another one, or are you happy with Ryerson and Wolf as your two main options, and then maybe an inkling of hope that Matteo Morey can play at some point in some capacity, and maybe even Thomas Meunier, because obviously a lot of people dump on Thomas Meunier, and obviously there are better right backs out there, but he's also not the very worst, I would say, if he's available.
I mean, I would say he's probably one of the, if not the best crosser that Dortmund have. I mean, his crosses are exceptionally well placed. But with Meunier and with Morey, I mean, you have two of the most injury-prone players I have ever seen at Dortmund. And so, people like dunking on him because it's easy on social media to dump on other people. I try not to do that as much as possible because I just think it's cheap. He's probably not going anywhere in this transfer window, but I don't think Dortmund need to sign another right back. I mean, Ryerson and Wolf, the beauty of them is they can also play on the left side. Ryerson a little bit better than Wolf, but I think you have the depth there right now. And like you said, I mean, Morey, see what happens there. Meunier, he comes back from his injury. I mean, he's at least there. It's at least someone who can play the role if you need to shift things around.
Yeah. Shift around is also the thing that Edin Terzic will have to do on the attacking positions. Now, obviously, it's very annoying that both Julian Duranville and Jamie Bynoe-Gittens, who I think is still recovering from yet another shoulder surgery, that they are both out. Duranville, I think, has muscular problems, and Karim Adeyemi also currently out with muscular problems, and we're not quite sure what his problem is, because he obviously carried muscular problems throughout the entirety of the summer break, more or less. So I was surprised to even see him play at some point in the during the US tour, but right now he's obviously out with an injury, and that to me is very problematic, because I think Dortmund's starting 11 is very clearly Malen on the one side and Karim Adeyemi on the other. And if you have that set up with then either Julian Brandt and Aller or Reus, for example, or say even Gio Reyna, should he be fit ever, then I think you have one of the most lethal attacks in the Bundesliga. But Adeyemi, to me, has to be fit. Has to be fit also because I do think that Sebastian Aller, hate to say this, but he looks a little stiff out there. He is not the quickest anymore, so you will have to have someone who has really above average pace, and in Karim Adeyemi's case, that is most certainly the case. Now, we obviously have Torgan Hazard back in the lineup. I don't know if he'll be around till the end of the season, if there are clubs out there that want to sign him or not. But to me, that's already a bit of a problem that Dortmund are missing so many key players, and in Bynoe-Gittens and Duranville's. I think Bynoe-Gittens has proven a little bit more. Duranville is obviously still very young and very raw. But they are both, from their skill sets, also difference makers that can win you games off the bench. And to not have that right now is very annoying to go into the season like that, because that dampens a little bit of my excitement, because these are obviously all talents that will go through the roof. I mean, Karim Adeyemi with his pace alone will just crush defenses time and time again. And considering that he has developed quite well in his first season, I don't see why it wouldn't continue like that. Should he stay relatively injury-free, because one can already predict that muscular problems will probably be a theme for him as the season continues. So, Matthias, looking at the attacking midfield and midfield in general, however, we've talked about Emre Can. I think we've named dropped Charlie Özcan at least. We've Marcel Sabitzer, with Julian Brandt, of course, with Reina, we have Royce, and all the attackers that I just mentioned, plus Yusufa Moukoko. Do you think that Dortmund need to sign another midfielder, be it for the wing, be it for center, be it for striker, playmaker? Where do you see a potential where Dortmund need to sign players, or do you think the squad and the depth as is fairly decent?
Well, it's definitely fairly decent. As far as a position that I think Dortmund need, I would like a solid backup and rotational option to Sebastian Haller. I don't think that's Yusufa Moukoko. Personally, I think Moukoko is an amazing player. I would like to see him out there more often, but not necessarily as the sole center forward. Given the way Dortmund play with Haller in there, if you can have someone slot in to fill that role more closely, then I think you just have this solid rotation. Now, you can make the argument Moukoko gives them something different, something they can try, a different angle to throw teams off. And if you want to go two strikers, you have, the big and the small, so to speak, approach that you can go with.
So you're
there.
saying we have failed to replace Anthony Modeste?
I wouldn't go quite, maybe physically, but beyond that, that's really the only place that I would see a more obvious gap when it comes to a playmaker. I think, Julian Brandt is the obvious. I think Sabitzer is a very good passer of the ball. Gio Reyna, when he's healthy and has his head on straight, is a creative passer. So you've got playmaking ability there. Marco Reus, he's going to have to become that more, just because pace and dribbling alone won't carry him much further. So he's going to have to change.
We really have to say about Reus, sadly, his finishing has kind of dipped too.
Correct. But I mean, he's 34. It's bound to happen sooner or later. It's surprising it didn't happen sooner, given his past injury issues. Torgan Hazard, you mentioned. I mean, when Hazard is on, when he's on form, he's very good. Also as a kind of playmaking type player. But
it's been a few seasons since he was
the club and the player have moved on. I mean, they're just like, you're here because you're not somewhere else, and that's it's a bummer. I like him, and it'll be a bummer to see him leave, but at the same time, not like gut wrenching to see him leave. It won't be a downgrade for Dortmund. Right now, it'll be a little bit of loss in depth, but I think overall Dortmund are in a good position because you can put a Reina, a Brandt, a Reus in those wing positions just as easily as you can put them centrally. So Dortmund have a lot of options there. So I wouldn't really see now any new additions needed for midfield centrally or on the wings. The only place that I still have a question mark is that center forward role as a backup to Haller, because we're now coming into an opportunity that I'm excited about, is seeing Haller play a full season. And really seeing what he's able to do. He showed a lot in that half season, unfortunately not in the last game. But in that half of a season. Now, if you can just kind of carry over that form consistently for a full season, I mean, he's the set number one striker. Moukoko won't be happy being the backup forever. But again, Haller is 29 years old. So, there is a ticking clock there as well, and Moukoko needs to grow a little bit, also physically a little bit. So that's, if I break down the entire squad, the only two positions are central defender and central forward where I would really like Dortmund to add some depth.
Yeah, I would actually argue that I personally would prefer a right back with even more quality than we already have. Riasson obviously has shown some dribbling magic in the preseason, and he is a better footballer than he's given credit for. But I still think that overall Dortmund can improve on that position. I'll be satisfied with Bensebaini for now, but maybe even on that position, ideally you want to improve. But good fullbacks are really hard to find, as is shown now, and I think the Riasson transfer from Union Berlin was a really smart one. So overall, I'm fairly happy with that. And Marius Wolf is obviously also really a hustler who, has hustled himself into the German national team. So that, I guess, is also positive, even though the German national team isn't what it used to be. We also have to admit. But that being said, I think you are right on the money when it comes to the player type of Sebastian Aller, because I do believe that Dortmund are desperate for a backup for Aller, and that's not because I don't rate Moukoko. I think he is a very good and capable player, but just playing style-wise, Moukoko sadly is a bit of the victim here, because he also needs an Aller ideally to play off of, or a player type like him, because the main strength of Aller, besides his finishing, is obviously his hold-up play, and that makes him really valuable for the way Dortmund attack and play, and so often counterattacks that Dortmund finish are started by him retaining the ball for a couple seconds in midfield. And if I'm honest, my ideal solution, I think right now, would be Marvin Duksch from Werder Bremen. Obviously born in Dortmund, has played for Dortmund, and he's 29 years old. His transfer market value is around 8 million. I obviously don't know what his plans are, and if he wants to be a number 2 or number 3 striker for Dortmund currently. No idea. But that being said, just from the player profile, because he's also someone that can hold up the ball fairly well, that can win you some headers if need be, and also someone that brings a certain dynamic to the center forward position. To me, that would be the ideal solution. I don't know if he's available. I also don't know if Dortmund are even inclined to sign him, but I know there were some rumors, a couple, I think last season, end of last season or mid last season, something like that. But I don't know if anything material is to it, but that to me is a player that would make sense, or someone like him, just from the player type. I think that would work out quite well. Dortmund often had reliable backup strikers, be it Adrian Ramos. I wouldn't even go as far as say Nikita Rangelov. I thought he was great, even though probably not many people will remember him. But certainly needed, and you just need a Julian Schieber type, a bullish player to bring on late that brings on some dynamicism, along with your dribblers of the Duranvilles and Bynoe-Gittens, etc., etc. So overall, I think depth-wise, Dortmund, especially in attacking positions, are well set. If it weren't for the 8th millionth injury they are already celebrating going into the season. So, Matthias, if we then look at Dortmund's season, we obviously now have the cup game on Saturday, and then we play Cologne at home, then Bochum away, then Heidenheim at home. So playing against very brave teams coming up from the second division early in the season is usually not very comfortable. Then away to Freiburg, home to Wolfsburg, away to Hoffenheim, and then Union Berlin. So I've seen people saying that Dortmund have to win all these games, but honestly, I just don't see it. It's a very tough opening program, if you will. What do you make of the opening weeks for this season, and how do you perceive Dortmund's form for the start of the season. How well do you think the Black and Yellows will handle it?
Well, I mean, shouldn't ignore Schott Mainz. Last time Dortmund played against a Mainz team, it didn't end too well. So
I'm already so tired. I'm so tired.
But looking at the Bundesliga schedule, I mean, none of these are easy. I mean, we can say that about any match. You can look at it and go, oh, this is not going to be easy. But Köln, Bochum, Heidenheim are 100% 3 matches Dortmund must win. And it'll be interesting because obviously Köln, it's hit or miss with them. They can either be very difficult for Dortmund or Dortmund can blow them away. Bochum, they were combative for Dortmund last season, so it'll be kind of nice to see that one. Heidenheim, we'll see. They'll definitely be up for it. Can I just say I'm really happy to see Heidenheim in the Bundesliga because they did it the right way. And the fact that their coach was born in Heidenheim, I think less than 10 minutes away from the stadium, and he's been their coach since the Verbandsliga, that says a lot to running a club. This is so for everybody who's international, this includes the media, this is actually a Cinderella story. Not Hoffenheim, certainly not Leipzig, not Wolfsburg, Heidenheim. This is a cool story. And then it's followed by the next cool story in Freiburg. And that's really where, these next matches after Heidenheim, Freiburg, Wolfsburg, Hoffenheim, Union Berlin. Those are going to be tough. The advantage Dortmund have is Wolfsburg and Union Berlin at home. Those were very good matches for them last season. Freiburg and Hoffenheim away are always going to be difficult because, of course, Stefan, Hoffenheim is a Friday night game because of course it is. And I'm just so sick of seeing Dortmund play under the floodlights in Hoffenheim. I cannot stand seeing it. I don't know why it's a consistent theme, but for some reason it is. And if we look at, in September, Dortmund play twice on Friday against Heidenheim and then Hoffenheim. And then, let's see, October, they've got another Friday night match. And, November, and then most of December, they don't. But it's
not scheduled yet.
It's not scheduled yet, that's true. But it's interesting that Dortmund get Friday nights a few times. I'll be curious to see once Champions League starts, what that does schedule-wise. But I would say these... Köln, Bochum, Heidenheim are the perfect ones to get started with to then deal with Freiburg, Wolfsburg, Hoffenheim, and Union Berlin.
Yeah, I'm also really intrigued to see, just in general, if Dortmund can keep up the points average that they were scoring in the second half of the season, even if you add the last 2 games, because the season was obviously cut in half a little bit differently due to the World Cup. So if you look at the post World Cup period, I don't know, I don't have it right in front of me, but it was certainly above 2 points, and a trajectory. If Dortmund, they look really good. It's kind of annoying that we did not have the classic Yellow Wall look back at the season. It's just because I was too butthurt and didn't want to talk about it, if we're being honest. But Matthias, had we done that, we would have certainly discussed how well Dortmund had developed, also as an attacking team, which at the beginning of the season, just think back to games like the cup match away to Hanover, just horrible football. Luckily, it has improved. Now, obviously, the question is, can Dortmund carry on and continue on that path, even though they are minus Jude Bellingham, who obviously is a major factor for Dortmund playing well over such a long stretch of time. So maybe that's a question I should just ask you right now. Do you think that Dortmund are capable of doing that? Because obviously Didi Hamann is already out here saying that Dortmund will not be near any title race. So that already makes me optimistic that they are. But what is your outlook? Because, and maybe I have to emphasize that, Dortmund have said clearly that they want to win the title this season, that they approach the season with we want to win the title approach and not let's wait and see what's going to happen. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, the good thing is you can just ignore anything Didi Hamann says or Jan Olga Fjotov or any of these people because they're just mouthpieces who are clickbaiting. The fact of the matter is that second half of the season, Dortmund were scoring goals and gaining points at a record pace across all European leagues. That is not sustainable long term. And there will be dips.
Nobody wants to hear that.
I know nobody wants to hear it, but there will be ebbs and flows to the season. Now, if Dortmund can do just half of that in the first half of the season, whereas last year in the first half of the season, Dortmund didn't get near that. Well, first of all, Dortmund would have won the title. But second of all, Dortmund are then in a title race in the Bundesliga as well because Bayern are also the big unknown. I mean, I know, if they bring in Harry Kane, which, good Lord, you want to talk about stuff that breaks my heart. That would be right at the top of that list.
I tried to steer clear of that for your sake.
Yeah, that could be a huge difference maker. I mean, that's that. Then Bayern are in a completely different echelon just from a goal scoring perspective that they currently are not in. They just aren't. If Bayern don't get Kane, then obviously Dortmund are in it. Now, the thing about Harry Kane for Bayern is Harry Kane is a goal machine who doesn't get injured a lot. And that's great for Harry Kane. It's great for Tottenham. It's not so great for Borussia Dortmund and the rest of the Bundesliga. Let's be perfectly honest, because, you're basically getting another Lewandowski type striker. And Bayern with Lewandowski was as close to unstoppable as you can get. And so there is a concern there. I think that will be the big wild card right now over the next few weeks that will show how close this could or could not be. That missing component for Bayern, and I think, it can be close for a long portion of the season. I think they will have their ups and downs as well. Maybe less so than last season, but overall it's more or less the same team. So I don't really see much difference there. But again, if you bring in a Harry Kane and then for some reason your Manuel Neuer backup keeper is Kepa, which is an interesting one that popped up the other day, then it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough no matter what. But I think Dortmund can be in the title race, but it's down to them to not have the Mainz, Schalke, Bochum point-dropping matches. Stuttgart.
Bremen.
If you lose matches because the other team played better, I don't have a problem with that. If you lose points because the other team got their fair share of luck, of refereeing decisions, and you just couldn't buy a goal despite overwhelming chances, those are the matches that just kill me. And at the end of the day, flip one of those games that we mentioned, Dortmund win the Bundesliga. That's the frustrating part about it. I don't think it's going to be quite that way because I just don't see Bayern dropping points on a consistent basis that they did in the second half of last season. It was like Dortmund and Bayern had the reverse seasons last year.
Bayern don't have to drop points at the same rate if Dortmund can somewhat stay where they were in the second half of the season.
Correct. So it'll be an interesting season because there are a few unknowns also below those two. There are people who said, Leipzig are going to be up there. Leipzig are going to be definitely near there. I don't know if they're going to be up there because Marco Rose is also very much capable of outthinking himself. Leverkusen will be an interesting one up there. You have no idea what to expect out of the likes of Frankfurt. I think Freiburg and Union Berlin, those were blips that they were pushing for Champions League. I don't necessarily see them there this year because they will also be playing Europe again, and that always throws a fly into the ointment. So it's going to be an interesting season. I mean, also a club like Gladbach. I have no idea what to expect there. I expect like 10th, 8th, 9th, somewhere in there.
Where do you think in the Bundesliga Schalke will finish?
Well, Stefan, it's interesting that you should mention that. I think they will regain promotion to the Bundesliga and from the Zweite Bundesliga, which is going to be an interesting Zweite Bundesliga season. It's already proven so far. So, yeah, no Schalke.
Yeah, which is even more a factor why Matchday 2 is a must-win against Bochum. Because there are only 2 Revier derbies. And thanks to Bochum, there even are 2 Revier derbies, because, let's be real, usually if Schalke get relegated, there are 0. So I'm very thankful for that, but obviously you have to have 6 points against Bochum this season. Can't fuck around like that anymore. You just cannot. But
I fully
Bochum
agree.
away, it's just never easy. You can make it easy, but you have to break them very early in the game and then keep stomping away. That can make it a little easier, but yeah, it's just never gonna go that way, is it? Anywho, Matthias, I think that just about does it for this week's episode. We shall already be back next week. It's gonna be a new rhythm for us now after I've took my sweet time off. I cannot begin to describe how wonderful it was to not have to deal with professional sports during the off season in general. Just I'm a much happier person all around. Maybe I should try it more often. But Matthias, are there any subjects that you wanted to discuss that we should discuss that I've missed? Otherwise, we can probably do that next week, as we then probably discuss the match against Schott Mainz and of course preview the season opener against FC Köln.
No, I am wunschlos glücklich, as we say in German. So, no, it's all good. Let's see what happens.
All right. As always, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. We shall be back next week, as I just said. Until then, goodbye.